Good morning, everybody. This is Miss Hodges coming on, and as you can see, I'm doing another screen share video. I have my two most important resources from Google Drive pulled up: sentence starters, because those are the things that start sentences, and complex sentence starters. And these are words that can help me create more fifth grade level sentences. Over here, I copied and pasted what makes an A, and I'm actually going to model or show you guys how would I answer question number 1 for your final exam, and how do I use that to help me, the A description, and how do I use these two things to help me. So some important things to know before I start writing is I know my expectation. I know that every time I answer a question, it needs to have multiple sentences and it needs to look like a chunk or a paragraph. So right away, go ahead, make sure you have your papers in front of you, your exam in front of you, and that's a quick thing that you're able to see and know, is if you've not got a little bit of a paragraph for question number 1, or another question, then you know you've got to add more. So that's the first thing. I know that sentence starters is right here, and that different types of sentences, this is going to help me with that. I have the question typed, but you guys don't have to rewrite the question. I just have it here because it's easier for me to answer all parts of the question with that there. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and show you that when I answer this question, I'm using these things to help me. So the question is, how do you think at a fifth grade level? What kinds of questions do you ask yourself while reading? What have you learned about digging deep? Share a memory you are proud of yourself for doing this thinking. Some of the best papers that I have so far, I notice, follow a pattern. They still have a main idea to start their response. Even though it's a response, they're still organizing it around an idea. And so some people are saying to think at a fifth grade level, I have to use strategies. And this is a pretty good main idea, because when you say strategies, that isn't too small. Strategies is a word where I can have lots of examples inside of it. So it's kind of like that work we've done all year, where it's not too big, not too small. Now, some of you might say, Miss Hodges, that is quite big. So when you say strategies, it could be anything. But it's better to have a main idea that's too big than a main idea that's too small. So I'm going to encourage you guys to go back to your work and make sure you have that main idea that organizes your response. So to think at a fifth grade level, I have to use multiple strategies before reading, during reading, and after reading. That's just something that I remember, and it's something I can add in my writing to make it even longer. Okay. And look at how I restated this question. To think at a fifth grade level, so making sure that I have my subject. I know it's a complete sentence because I'm talking about I. Okay, but rather than just say that, I know that to get that paragraph, I have to provide multiple examples. So I'm going to do that piece right here. This is what I'm noticing a lot of people doing. They're just starting to list strategy. Words, job, mood or tone, 3-word summary are all things that help me. Okay, that's a really good starting point if you name strategies, but did you really take time to talk about each one? Did you really take time to dive deep into each one? No. And you don't have to name 10 strategies and talk about all 10, but you should definitely have multiple examples and then talk about them. So I'm going to go ahead, instead of just listing them and naming them, I'm going to make sure I talk about each one. So I know the next part is my examples. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to look for a sentence starter to make sure I'm working at that fifth grade level. I like this one. Regularly, which means often, or frequently, which also means often or a lot. So if it's a sentence starter, it's got to start my sentence. Frequently, comma, who uses the strategy? I. So make sure you have that I. Frequently, I like to, oh no, not I like, because I want to make sure I'm talking about what's helpful. Frequently, I scan the text before reading. Whenever, I see this out of the corner of my eye, whenever I see an illustration or a graphic, I pause and ask myself, is this positive or negative? So far I've taken one strategy. I scanned the text before reading. I named my first example. I used an awesome sentence starter whenever. I made it a 5th grade level because I told you what I do in my brain. I actually told you I pause and ask myself. If you just name a strategy, then you're just listing it. You need to talk about what the strategy looks like. So if you say, I use words job, well, what does that look like? What does that mean? You need to almost talk about it like I don't know the strategy, which is what I did. I said, whenever I see an illustration or graphic, I pause and ask myself, is this positive or negative? And then why is that important? This helps me, or take it and connect it to your essay writing from 4th and 5th grade. This is important because, and I'll just use that sentence starter you guys already know from 4th grade. This is important because it helps me stick to the author's point and gets me closer to the main idea of a text. Okay, so that's just one example so far. I've only talked about scanning the text. I need to add a second example. And you guys know how to do a second example. You can use those transition words like likewise, or you could say furthermore. Oops, I spelled that wrong. Furthermore. Or you could do that sentence starter in addition. Or you could just say another. Let me come to my mat though and look. Is there another? These aren't really helping me right now. So I'm going to go ahead and just use something I already know. Another 5th grade level strategy. See how I'm restating parts of the prompt or parts of the question. What questions do you ask yourself? I already did that right here. I pause and ask myself. So ask yourself, ask myself. I'm restating that. Okay, another 5th grade level strategy is the words job. Or no. Ooh, is visualizing the scene to help with unfamiliar words and vocabulary. Okay, this is an awesome sentence that you guys could steal because of these words right here. I didn't just say a strategy, visualizing the scene. I said the strategy is visualizing the scene, and then I talked about to help with. And that tells me that you know the strategy, and then you know why it's helpful. Okay. So then what I need to do is another 5th grade level strategy is visualizing the scene to help with unfamiliar words and vocabulary. Let me go over here to this mat. Think about a sentence that I could just, I like this one, since. Or I could say before I use this strategy, since I've used this strategy. But every time I use one of these words, I don't just say the word, I say since and then I, because I'm talking about my experience. So in your writing, when you use these words, make sure you always talk about your experience, okay? So, ooh, you know what's a really good word I don't think is here that you can use in your writing? And we talk about this in class, if you take something away. Without visualizing the scene, who, remember who we're talking about? I. So now, instead of telling you why it's important in a good way, I'm actually going to tell you why it's important in a bad way. So this is an awesome word you can use. Without visualizing the scene, I can run into a trap of not sticking to what's inside the story or the text. Now I'm on a roll. And here's another sentence starter. When reading, it is very easy to get distracted with my own ideas and my own thoughts about the story. Opposite word, however, that's a good one to use in your writing. However, 5th grade thinking and digging deep is all about synthesis. And then look what I do. I'm about to do expert talk. Synthesis is, so did you guys actually tell me what one of your words mean? Synthesis is when, actually it's not when, synthesis is taking your own ideas and combining them with what the text says. Alright, so now I've named my second example. I've used a lot of things off this mat. I know I've done that because I've looked at it a number of times. I've also used words like however or in addition. I've not answered all parts of the question yet. Variety of ways to end sentences. So I've got a question mark here. I've got a lot of periods. But I've got a question mark, so I did do it a couple of different ways. Speaking from the heart. Okay, have I really put in my personal experience yet? No. When I read my response, it's a lot of facts. I want to make sure that I leave something personal to make it that A. And that's, I'm going to do that when I'm sharing my memory in a moment. I did use an elaboration strategy. I did expert talk. And I think I do have great vocabulary, like visualizing, synthesis, the scene. I used a lot of academic words. Distracted, that's pretty good. Combining. Yeah, I did pretty good with that. Oh, Chester! Chester's in the tree. You guys can't see it, but I can. Okay, here we go. What have I learned about digging deep? Okay, here's a great sentence starter. Let me see if it's on here. But this is one you guys can definitely use in your whole paper. Not in the morning. Here we go. At the beginning of the year. Steal that and use that in your reflection. At the beginning of the year, comma, who? Whose experience are you talking about? I. So at the beginning of the year, I was, and let me think. At the beginning of the year, I did not truly understand that digging deep meant pushing my thinking to a higher level. In fact, do I want to use that sentence starter? No. I'm actually going to use it. Actually, I never thought about the different levels of thinking that go with each grade level. See what I did there? I talked about digging deep, pushing my thinking, and then I just put a little thought. Actually, I never thought about the different levels of thinking that go with each grade level. Okay? Now, share a member you are proud of yourself for doing this thinking. Hi, Chester. Sorry, got my cat outside. Okay, so share a memory. Let me see. So I could actually use a sentence starter to talk about when my memory took place. Like, instead of, ooh, this is a good one, in January, in March, in the beginning of the year, in the middle of the year, at the end of the year, in whole group, in centers, on a test. These are all good sentence starters that I'm just creating. Or you could restate, one memory I have, and it's a memory, so it's a time. I need to use the word when. One memory I have when I did this thinking was towards the end of the year. And I'm going to write from my teacher perspective right now. I'm going to write a little bit from the heart. I was preparing to teach my students one last unit on comparing and contrasting. Let me look at my sentence starters. See how many times I'm still forcing myself to go look and see here? I'm going to use this whenever again. I like that one. Whenever I have needed to teach my students strategies, I have used the internet and research books to gather the best strategies available from expert teachers. However, I had never seen a chart or strategy post on the internet about comparing and contrasting. And I'm just going to go ahead and start a sentence with I, because I've not done that a ton. So it's okay, I'm going to use a simple sentence. I'm writing from the heart right now. I sat for days, comma, and I sat for hours trying to think of how to break this intense, complicated work down for my students. I came up, well, I don't want to keep going I. So I know a good one. Eventually, which I think is maybe here. Yep, right there. Eventually, who? I. Eventually I came up with multiple strategies like look for novelty and leave breadcrumbs. 3-word summary. That's another way of saying leave breadcrumbs. Eventually I came up with multiple strategies like look for novelty and leave breadcrumbs that helped my class dig deep and keep track of the information that was important. It challenged me, this work, and I'm just writing from the heart right now, but I'm not just trying to get done typing my experience. I'm taking my time sharing my experience. And I'm using words like challenged. I'm telling you why this experience was important. And I told you more about the struggle that I was having. And I told you things like intense and complicated. So I kind of set a mood or tone in my own writing. But look, I still talked about some strategies from my memory. And here's this word again. I used it earlier, right? Helped. Yep. So helped or useful, use that word. This work challenged me as a teacher, but I knew the work was worth it when students had already marked the text with answers before even seeing the questions. Okay, and you guys know what I'm talking about. That was a pretty cool memory for me. Okay, so this was my response. Wow, that's only one question. I answered all the parts of the question. I went to the mats over and over and over again. Holy cow, I used these a ton. I used the word whenever twice, but that's okay. I didn't use it every single time. I pushed myself to look at the time and to change it. I spoke from the heart when I gave you my memory, and I told you why it was difficult, why it was challenging, how it affected me, how it impacted me. I did expert talk. I tried to use higher level vocabulary. That went with what we learned in class, but also some words to describe the work there. So this is an A right here. I highlighted a lot of things in green, so you could pause the video to help you, but obviously this is my experience, so I don't expect to see anyone's work and anyone's question number 1 look exactly like mine. You can definitely take the words like without, however, take expert talk, use it in your writing. You can say strategy is da 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 to help with da 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 da. at the beginning of the year, you can use that. You could change it to say at the middle, at the end. You could use the word whenever, frequently, or often. You guys can use some of the sentence work that I did, but I wanted to show you an A example of what it looks like. I didn't just name strategies. I didn't just say use strategies. I mentioned specific ones, and I told you how they helped along the way. So this is an A paper right here. It's very long. It's a huge chunk. I used the charts. I used elaboration. I gave memories. And now I want you to look at your work that you've done and think about, how does your work look compared to mine? Okay, I am older. I've got a lot of experience writing. So we know that about my writing. It's always going to be a little bit better. And the spelling in mine is going to be a lot stronger. But did you do the same things I did with the charts? Did you really push yourself to not name strategies, but to explain how they were helpful? Okay, what I would suggest is picking one question and rewriting it. And don't copy my work necessarily, but copy what my thinking was like in my brain. Look at how I went back and forth. Look at how I always challenged myself to start sentences different ways. That's the work for you to copy. Okay? All right, thanks guys. I will talk to you today. Text me, call me with your questions. Work on revising. If you've already submitted your exam, your feedback is on your tracker, and I'm putting the tracker links on YouTube.